April 1912. The richest ship ever built goes down, and the man who financed her never boards. 18 months later, the Federal Reserve is born. A century after that, the printing never sleeps. This is the story of the money. Yeah, the story goes the Gilded Age was printed on a manifest. A floating palace made in Voyage Morgan's grandest canvas yet. Asked the Guggenheim and Straits aboard her when she slipped the pier. And legend swears that everyone opposed the plan they shipped that year. Now J.P. Baker's pardon at the dock, his health was ailing. So the old world's oldest fortunes met the water while the band was playing. But I only deal in ledger, so I'll read you what Sundial did. 20 months from icy water to the printer, go about it. 6 men, all them in nice real car. First names on the curtains drawn. Aldrich, Warburg, Davis in the dynasties that put the dawn. A Rockefeller, Whittington, proximity, diplomacy. 9 days on Jekyll Island, wrote the arithmetic dynasty.
They can print it, but they can't print that. No, they can't. Every dollar's getting thinner, better watch your back. So where you get the truth?
The Daily Stack.
Where you learn the game?
Daily Stack.
12:30 on the dot, and we don't know how to slack. When the paper turns to powder, I'll be sitting on the stack.
So the engine started humming, watch a century capitulate. In 33 they took the gold, a signature note litigating. 6102 a decade in the silver, what you holding? Page you 20, priced at 35, the share was silent golden. Then every war became a tab, the printing press would underwrite. Vietnam drained out the vaults till Nixon cut the cord one Sunday night. 2 decades in the desert, ran it, Trugan on the ticket. No bond driving, no bake sales, just dilution, so specific. Come on, eat the whole casino, nearly burned down to the framing. So they built a house with Joe, the pot is called the ashes saving. Balance sheet ran wonderful while wages barely got a raise. That was just a dress rehearsal for the flood of later days. March 2020 markets in free fall.
Welcome back to the Daily Stack. We got Jordan Herbs with us this morning. We're diving into Buzz, Jack Dorsey's latest software that's like a Slack GitHub competitor and replacement, but it has a lot of cool decentralization features. We got Grain of Salt joining us at 1:30 Eastern. He's going to dive into how he's using AI for his own investment portfolios, decoding what Saylor's saying. Jordan, how are you?
Good, man. Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. So as of yesterday, I was on and I jumped on with Avi and it had didn't have a big chunk of my tooth just missing. So I had chipped my tooth 10 years ago and I had a filling come out Monday while I was working. And so I was like, oh, I got to get this fixed. But I jumped on yesterday. So anyone that tuned in saw super redneck looking Jody. And then it's incredible how fast they can fix teeth these days. They put the glue, they grind it down, they use UV, a blue UV light. So in 20 seconds, it hardens it's like carbon fiber or concrete. Absolutely impressive tech. I'm this is the future, even though it's been around for a decade, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to think about. I don't really go to doctors or dentists very often, but I did as a kid. And so in my head, all that technology is just what it was when I was a kid. So yeah, it's interesting to think about what you're saying. If you said 10 years ago?
10 years ago.
I think I chipped a tooth probably when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I would have done anything like that. So that's the memory I have of it in my head.
Yeah. It's a better system now.
Yeah. Cool. Well, glad your tooth is good. But yeah, so Jack Dorsey released or announced Buzz yesterday. Do you want to pull that up? I think it's buzz.xyz.
Yeah.
So it looks really interesting at first glance. It's basically a Slack alternative, but for the age of AI, right? So it's got agents built in. It comes with a few. I can do a walkthrough after we go through this, but it's AI native essentially. It's Slack. It's Slack, but for AI. And what makes it interesting is that you log in with your Nostr public or private key. So you're logging in into a relay essentially, but the relay, they host it. You can't host your own relay, which I guess makes sense for the average user, but was a little frustrating for me because I self-host my Nostr or a relay, with Umbrel at my house, so I can just have that feel of self-sovereignty, and that is also how Buzz is kind of marketed. But at this moment, at least when I was signing up, you cannot start a Buzz community on your own relay. So you log in with your Nostr private key, but you're using their Builder Labs relay, which isn't the end of the world. But it was.
Do you think they're moving towards that? Like you would think that with Jack Dorsey, a lot of what he's doing isn't necessarily to make money, but more just to do the ideological way of where he would want to go, right?
I'm assuming that's going to come. I'm assuming. I don't see why it wouldn't. But there's also probably some layers of complexity involved when you allow people to use their own relay. So maybe it's just not there yet. So I remember back in the day, it was really hard to run a Nostr relay unless you were a total cyber nerd engineer developer type. And then it slowly just got easier and easier to now some dork like me can open it up on his Umbrel and have a relay. But yeah, so that was a little bit, what's the word I want to use? Just kind of a bummer when I open that up. But yeah, I'm sure it's coming. And then I can share my screen and show what it actually looks like on the inside. It's an interesting little app. I don't think Slack has anything to worry about just yet, but it's definitely.
I was thinking about that. Is I just did a setup last night. I don't use like that often, but occasionally you do because you need to have a client or something that wants to communicate via Slack. So yeah, there's some stickiness there.
Yeah, because that's people just like having a single workspace, right? With all their communication and stuff, I guess. So this is the main window, and you can see here in this welcome everyone channel. I'll start here in the agents. So these are the default agents: Fizz, Honey, and Bumble. And they're all using Opus via Claude Code. I'm trying to see where I have things connected, maybe here in the settings. Agents. Yeah, so agent runtimes. I should turn that on. That's probably why my agents keep awake while agents are active. Yeah. So you can connect these agent runtimes. So they have the Buzz agent, Goose, which is another Jack Dorsey project.
Yeah.
And then I have code. So all these are here, and that's where it's essentially getting its compute from, I'm assuming. What is this compute one? Share this machine with your relay. When on, other members can run their agents here. All right, I haven't explored this yet, but that's interesting. So other members, or maybe even other agents, could just use your local models here from your machine. Experiments. Yeah, this was what I kind of was attracted to from the get-go, is connect Git repos. So the agents can access your Git repo projects and collaborate with you right away.
Yeah.
Then threaded channels. I want that too. Anyway, so this is my little community, and then as soon as it started, I got a welcome message, and let's see. Yeah, it says, "Hi, Jordan Herbs. I'm Fizz. Welcome to Buzz. This is your private home base. Meet Honey and Bumble." And so then that agent tagged these agents, and then they responded. So Bumble is the resident researcher that digs into open questions. And then Honey is your writing and thinking partner. I help you get ideas out of your head and onto the page clearly. What can we help you build? So then I said, okay, I might enter this competition, the X Prize. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like a little festival. And I gave it some scenarios, and then just didn't respond. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe because I didn't tag Fizz. So I started a new thread, and I tagged Fizz, and I was like, okay, I want to create a concept, a submission for this contest. And so it looked at my documents, and it took quite a while, but then it basically just gave me what I wanted right out the gate. And then I said, yes, let's nail that detail. Yes, let's nail that detail. And it just didn't respond. So maybe if I tag Fizz, it'll actually work. Okay, so now, okay, so it saw it. Yeah, I guess you just have to tag the agents and every little thing if you want them to do something, which is kind of a little annoying. But yeah, so it's you can add AI agents as like Slack bots to Slack, but I don't think it's really like a native experience, right? You kind of have to build the bot to be an agent. This is more, from my understanding, this is more just a straight up, it can act like a Hermes or OpenClaw agent just right there for you.
Yeah. I think also the setup, if we've used a ton of the Telegram bots, so you need to use BotFather within Telegram. And getting permissions right does take a while. So if you're setting up a Hermes agent, OpenClaw agent, and allowing other team members to be able to, first you set it up with BotFather to like have a Telegram bot that's represented by, or it's like representing your Hermes agent or OpenClaw agent. It can take a while. You have to do a lot of back and forth with a VPS or local machine, getting permissions right with talking in a new group, the people that can talk to it, tagging it. If you've ever had two agents that could talk to each other, it can go in this endless loop of just burning through tokens and just annoying you because it'll keep going forever. So I do think there's some structure there that helps. But if, like you said, you got a no response before, so it seems like it's encountering some of those same issues of getting set up and live super like easily.
Right. Yeah. So then all the agents, they have their settings over here, and we have teams. So I could make a new team, create a team with engineering squad to like content creation. And then I can add the agents I want in there.
Yeah.
And then you can add additional instructions. So beyond the team members' regular instructions, they have the team instructions. So like regular instructions for Honey, right? We come here to their runtime. You are Honey, a warm and thoughtful communicator. Help users write clearly, organize ideas, brainstorm, summarize, and prepare conversations, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and then you see what's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with ACP, Agent Client Protocol, but essentially OpenClaw and Hermes would do this too. So if you have like a workspace that has its own skills and context and hooks and commands and all that, then I'm probably butchering this, but how I understand it is you would say OpenClaw use ACP to run this workspace, because it would need a new like orchestrator agent. A sub agent couldn't just do it because there'd be sub agents inside there as well. So that's what ACP does. And so this Honey, when Honey is working, it's using the Claude agent ACP. So it goes over to Claude Code, the Claude Code harness. So with each of these models, I could say like, I'm assuming I could edit it to be like, yeah, use Goose instead, use Buzz Agent instead, use Codex instead. So you can choose the harness that each agent runs. So essentially, if I've got all these Claude codes, you could have multiple Claude codes running in here. And I don't know how it works as far as Anthropic's billing policy and if it uses your usage or API. But yeah, so I actually think this is pretty cool because it gives these agents a lot more power and a lot more flexibility to actually do like more complex tasks.
Yeah.
So yeah, who can talk to this agent? Only me or anyone, or an allow list. So you could bring a whole team of humans into Buzz as well as your agents, and it would just be a lot more convenient than like what I have, like my team on Element with agents, with people, and it's just not the right interface for that. And there's a reason people like Slack, because it is a nice interface for collaborating and getting things done, so to speak. So yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely cool. I haven't experimented with it that much yet, but I think if you're listening to this, if you have a team and you have agents you work with already, and what I'm thinking is if you have like agent harnesses or agentic workspaces that you play with, this could be a cool way to just like centralize all of those things you do with different workflows, so you can just talk to them in one place. So I use an IDE like VS Code or Cursor, for example, to have different agents do different things in different workspaces. But instead, I could just have a channel, for each thing. So I could just create a new channel. We call that content repurposing. And so where I would normally use my IDE, like Cursor, to do my content repurposing, I could just have the agent in here, create an agent just for that. And it knows exactly what to do. And it uses ACP, we give it all the data it needs to just be able to run that workflow every time I come in here. And I can just have everything in one window. So in a lot of ways, this does look a lot like an IDE, if that's how you're using an IDE as well, just with your agent window. And you just select your agent from the left menu, and then the agent's running here.
Slackified IDE.
What's that?
Slackified IDE, right?
Yeah, it's a slackified IDE for normies, I guess, but built for, I guess, self-sovereign, forward-thinking individuals that want to log in with their Nostr private key.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. If you think about the people that actually do use Nostr, I mean, you don't need to be a Nostr user to use this, because when you log in, you can just create a key, right? And the user doesn't even know, oh, a key was made? What? You just log in. But it is interesting to think the crossover, like how many Bitcoiners are Slack users, right? How many Nostr users are Slack users? And how many AI agent aficionados are looking for an interface like this? So it'll be interesting to see, I guess, the product market fit. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think it's part of where there's like, on one side, is this a product you should use today? Like, it's not for everyone. But on the other side is an important product, which is like kind of Jack Dorsey-esque of, should somebody be making this and working on it? I think so. Yes. I think it's a good way to drive the conversation towards like how if you're going to be doing all these agentic workflows and building your business around agents, which most people are going to want to do once they get a taste of it, because it does save you a lot of time and work. And I think accelerates so many projects. You do start 10 projects instead of 3 projects. So maybe you just have more unfinished projects, which we've talked about. The interesting thing is we've talked about last like 2 weeks at least on Company Brains. I've spent most of my time doing that. I think it's been incredible experience, just like going deep on something. And then if you set it aside, when you come back to it, you can like continue from the 50-yard line instead of like restarting. I think it just gets everyone back up to speed so much faster. One thing I was talking about with our setup with the Brains and using Buzz is, for a Bitcoin show, for a Bitcoin business, it's absolutely something you should be looking at. But it also was released yesterday, so going all in is not something you recommended. Testing it out. It also, on the side of just sovereignty, which is very important for us, Buzz also hosts Git natively, standard smart HTTP clone push, and then in principle, the Brain repo that we have on our back end that we're building out, the knowledge base, this could someday live on a relay we own instead of GitHub, which is the self-sovereign in-game Dorsey is selling. So to tie this into Gary Tan's Gbrain concept of this, GitHub repo, each employee is downloading this, locally, but it does live in GitHub. We talked about how there's a great resiliency and durability of that, of like everyone has their own local copy of this file structure and these knowledge files, not deep raw data, but just like the insightful data on top of it. If this is off of GitHub, that's like one less provider you're worried about. You would own the data itself. It's not going to be on GitHub servers. So there's potential here, but it said, right now, like, test it out. Don't spend a lot of your team's time exploring it until we like really flesh out, is this a need?
I think as soon as you can host your own relay, then it would be definitely worth a bigger investment of time. I'm excited by this, and I just put this in here to remind me. But I would love, like you were saying at the beginning, or at the beginning of your last little bit there.
Yeah.
I have all these not finished projects, right?
Yeah.
And in my case, I'll have like all these different, like I'll have one workspace open for like my personal brand, one workspace open for AI captains, right? And in each workspace, I'll have 3 or 4 agents running at different times of the day. And then when I have a moment, I come back to it and I prompt it again, right?
Yeah.
And to the tune of like, I didn't shut down my computer for like 2 weeks because I didn't want, because as soon as you shut your computer down, the Claude Code instances close. And so and then you'd have to do resume and find all the different chats, all the different sessions. And I'm like, I'm not ready to close these down. So it would be cool to have in this Buzz interface an agent that is paying attention to all the different projects going on, all the different sessions, right? Fable's building this over here. Opus is building this over here. Codex is building that over here. And then this reminder agent, like twice a day, says, hey, by the way, you haven't finished this yet. You haven't finished this yet. And you have these open harness workspaces, whatever you want to call them, workflows in the middle of something. Like I've been working on automating an ad campaign, for a few days now. And it would just be cool if there was an agent here in Buzz, the reminder agent, that'd be like, hey, by the way, is that ad campaign launched yet? We have this agent, you've been working on it. Or this agent that's working on the ad campaign automatically just pings reminder agent and is like, hey, this is done. So that way the human, which is limited in bandwidth, can not have to worry about paying attention to like the Kanban board, right? Of like, is this thing done yet? But still rock out their creativity in, prompting here, prompting there, getting all these things going. Because it's fun. I mean, that's what I just do all day. I'm just prompting AI agents all day, different computers, different projects. And to me, it's really fun and fulfilling. But I cannot deny that I get lost sometimes and all the different things that are going on.
Yeah. It can be really hard to sleep, I think. Shut the brain off. I know people get this like AI psychosis.
Yeah.
So they're and we've talked about last week, I think, or I brought up around Gary Tan is getting a divorce now. And one thing he tweeted out several months ago was like, oh, just had like a 19-hour coding session with Claude. And people, quote tweeted that and said, dude, you probably should have spent more time with your wife and family during that time. Like, Claude will be there. And I think he's done a great job with the brain, but like, there's only so much that you need to be the person prompting it, like, and you need to be the person driving AI for every initiative. Like, you can't pick everything. So I think it's fascinating to think about, like, what does Jack Dorsey choose, right? He doesn't seem to really care about more money necessarily. I don't think he's like altruistic in the same way of what Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to sell everyone. But I think he does want to, I think he's more satisfied than another IPO is going to be like a Steve Jobs visionary character. So I think he's looking for that durability, beyond just starting X and starting Square, or starting Twitter and starting Square. So it's curious to see. I'm most curious to see is like what's the signal, and just like this is what he's deciding to work on, like agent workflows, versus payments, or a hardware wallet for Bitcoin.
Well, I think if I were to take a stab at it, the common thread is self-sovereignty and self-hosting, right? I mean, even though you can't host your own relay yet, but that sounds like that's the direction. And what also is interesting is I don't know Slack that well, but I do know in Slack you can have like external channels.
Yeah.
So like if your organization is working with another organization, you can have a shared channel. So the members that are involved can't access your whole Slack. They can only access the channel of that collaboration. So imagine shared Buzz channels that are your identity is tied to a private key, right?
Yeah.
That I also find could be an interesting, just interesting the way that pans out. I can't even really imagine the use cases for it beyond what we already use for Slack, but there could be some stuff there. There could also be adding Bitcoin payments situations into Buzz as well. But yeah, I would just say everything I see Jack Dorsey working on has something to do with self-sovereignty and freedom technology. And I really admire him for that, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're gonna make money or anything like that. And I don't know what their fiduciary duties are to, I don't know if they have investors or whatever. I don't know, but I appreciate the work he's doing, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting with Goose too, right? It does seem like there's understanding like the product development cycle of like what does he consider a product ready to release, and is something like this where there's not, you can't host your own relay, is that something that maybe should have waited, you know, or does he feel like it's more important to like gauge reception early, you know, put the MVP out there, get feedback on it, and you know something like a Goose, you know, it has value in its own way, but then BitKey, you know, in that product there. So that is one like thing that I think people are dealing with a little bit, is like, all right, I have this cool vibe coded app, but like how much more do I need to put into it, or you know, to
Yeah,
get it
right.
out there?
Yeah, let me see here. I'm just looking at the. I stopped sharing my screen because I didn't want to dox anything. But
Always smart.
yeah, hosted communities. Buzz works with any relay. This page is only for relay hosting provided by Block. Sign in with a Builder Lab account to create and manage Block hosted communities. So how do I host my own relay? Transfer ownership. Don't need to do that. Connect. Don't need to do that. Create a community, .communities.buzz.xyz. So yeah, it's saying it works with any relay, but I don't know how to do it. Interesting. Anyway, I'm sure someone smarter than me has already figured it out, and I'm sure it's going to be easier soon. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't have focused so much on that a little earlier.
You gotta try it out. What's been your experience recently? Have you used OpenAI's new models? Have you used Kimi? What's like your mix? Because you mentioned you're talking to multiple agents. What's been your agent mix past like week?
So I still have not used Kimi.
Okay.
And I've used a little bit of the new OpenAI models. I wasn't very impressed, to be honest. I think Fable blows them out of the water for most of the things I do, which included vibe coding an app. So I would have Fable creating the plans for all the phases, and then I would either have Opus or GPT 5 point whatever Soul do the coding, and then Fable audit the work. And there was just a lot of issues with Soul, so I wasn't impressed. But to be honest, I've just never enjoyed working with OpenAI models. I don't know why. I just never. Maybe it's just a deep bias I have, but I just don't like OpenAI models and
Do
OpenAI
you
in
feel like
general.
they're soulless?
Soulless. Yeah, there's that. I'm also not terribly stoked on Anthropic's behavior lately, but what can I do? I think the product is great. I think Fable is a really amazing model. So I've been using mostly Fable. In fact, I'm at like 85% of my limits today. So I'm trying to tone it down because I don't reset till Friday.
Yeah.
But I've been using a lot of Fable, been making like video games for my son and a learn to read thing and game. And yeah, so yeah, but I haven't used Kimi yet. And I've been kind of waiting till the open weights have been released so I can use it via Venice, because I use Kimi for my Hermes agent, but I use it through Venice, so it's no data retention. And I just felt like upgrading to Kimi K3 would be the right move. But then I saw how expensive Kimi K3 is actually. And it's like, it's almost up there with, I think it's more expensive than Sonnet. So it's like a Fable style model or Opus. Like it's not cheap. So I'm not sure I'll use Kimi K3. But yeah, truth be told, I just haven't had a lot to explore with it. I've just been so into Fable. I'm just kind of like I haven't had time for Kimi.
Yeah, I'm doing both. Like, have Codex open on a lot of the same projects. For the brains, that we're working on. So like 2 brains or maybe 3 brains now, actually. And then I have Fable doing a lot of strategy stuff. And then now, like with the brain connected, it's just like the most I'd say addicting thing is opening up the like Claude Cowork project, turning on Fable, and then saying, based on all the brain knowledge, what about this idea? And it just takes like a idea and then it just wraps it around like the most experienced person in your company that's been working there for 10 years. And it spits out just a really attuned strategy that is just like, oh, this is, I don't have to agree with all of it, but like this is something that even if a team member disagrees, they respect the amount of of information and that they're getting in return for the argument. It's not just like, oh no, that's dumb. It's, oh, here's why this doesn't meet this criteria for making, for going this direction, or it doesn't meet your,
Right.
business criteria for not wanting to do like a service heavy, time intensive work, what's scalable. So it takes things through like a thought process each time. So incredibly, you see where things are going. And I'll share this real quick is with Greg Eisenberg. Is I thought down here is he put out this post yesterday. I can link it in the chat. But 2 things he says down here: every SOP is turning into a product. So every standard operating procedure is turning into a product. The way a business does one thing written down as a markdown file an agent can run is now something you can sell. Knowledge that used to live in someone's head became downloadable. The moat moved from what you know to how well your business is written down. The company an agent can actually run wins. So being legible beats being big. So I think having these strategies and operating procedures, how you evaluate a business, how you evaluate something in a brain, I think is super good. So if you had like Jack Dorsey on your team thinking about product and strategy and how to go to market, then like get his decision process in writing, because that's going to make your agent just so much smarter on like how you flesh things out and run a winning playbook is what it comes down to.
Yeah, man. I mean, having a second brain, I mean, I've been working on ad campaigns. And so, like, I'll just say, hey, I have this idea for an ad campaign. Here's the thought. And then, craft it, show me a demo of it, what it'll look like. And then I don't even have to say, like, look at the brain, because it just knows, because it's inside the workspace. And then it looks at everything, and then it'll create like different concepts for me. And I just say what I like. And then it sends it straight to Meta Ads Manager, and I can launch it. It's like, it's cool. I've never done ads before because I've always just been too intimidated. The whole process is just a lot. But now that I can automate it, I'm like, oh, cool. This is doable now. But yeah, I mean, when he says, if a company that can be run by an agent, like, yes, but you still have a human, there's a human that needs to direct things. I mean, maybe not forever, but agents are going to do all the work, but a human still has to like prompt them, right? To tell them what to do. Until I guess you just have a buzz community with all the agents running cron jobs saying, oh, now we have to do this. Now we have to do this. And then Fizz saying, hey, we're not making enough money, Bumble, change the rules. That's interesting to think about as well with Buzz. Maybe that could be a good workspace for autonomous agents running a company to run and grow and scale a business autonomously. That's interesting as well.
Yeah. And I think you learn from that of like, how far can it go? How far can,
in fact, that would just be a fun experiment. I wish I had a good idea for a business.
Yeah. Maybe the Buzz thing that's the real test is how can we get them just looping, building something, give them full access to a certain like scoped tool set and then be ready to go.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Got me thinking.
What was I going to say? I had another post to pull up. Oh, there we go. So we got Grain of Salt joining us shortly. Jordan, what can you leave us with? Happy to stay on, but if you got to jump, what can you leave us with for the next week?
Keep building out there. We didn't even talk about the geopolitical stuff going on, but that's kind of eerie too.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about it next week, or I mean, we'll probably have some resolution in the next few weeks, so we can bring that up again. But yeah, just stay building and stay sovereign over your tools. So even if you're using Claude Code, whatever you're using, understand how those agents work underneath the hood. That's what I'll just keep preaching. Understand how your agents work beneath the hood. So if you are left in the dust and you no longer have access to a product or a service or a model, you can still get your work done.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at tools, experiment with them. Buzz, I think, yeah, we got to applaud them for doing it. I like that it's on Nostr. Kudos to that. So if we're hating, it seems like we're hating it all. It's not full hate. It's keep doing what you're doing. But we gotta critique a little bit. We gotta say why you only have so much time in the day, so don't spend all your time, trying to get your whole team over to this. Experiment with just you and your agents, I think, first for a good week.
Yeah. Amen.
Sweet.
All right, guys.
Jordan, again, sorry about Argentina. I had no dog in the fight, but I know you were cheering down there in Argentina for them.
Yeah, it's been a somber week since yeah. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Mike, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
How are you? Grain of Salt. We're excited to have you. We met in person at the Digital Asset Summit in New York in 2025. Then I saw you at the Strategy World in Orlando in 2025. A great talk. You were very gracious. We filmed some stuff together, or at least in the same spot. And yeah, it's been a journey. We had Adrian or Los Angeles Hoddle there as well. Filming documentary. And it's been a roller coaster. How are you right now? You seem to keep fighting. Rolling with the punches on the treasury side.
So a couple things. One of the things about Bitcoin is that it's every 3-6 months. It's new. You have to continuously update and learn what's going on. It's not like, oh, this happened a year ago and that's the way things work. And people have said to me online, that's not what you said 3 months ago. I'm like, 3 months ago, everything was different. Or even 8 weeks ago, May 10th, Bitcoin was 82,000.
Yeah.
We didn't think it was going to drop down to 59. And so they're like, well, you changed your position. I'm like, yeah, I did change my position. Well, the question is, why don't you change your position? So is it a roller coaster? Yeah, that's just the way it is. And I don't know why that's surprising to people. I mean, do you have any views of why it's surprising to people?
It's I think people want to hold people receipts. I think they see the blockchain is stamping together, hey, here's the proof. But the market changes so quickly. And one thing I actually mentioned to someone recently on Friday, I got a beer with a guy in our Ben Bitcoin meetup. And I was like, look, I actually like that Borja Martels, the CEO of Roxxam, came on and he talked about, look, I don't care what you guys are saying about 4-year cycle being dead. It is still live. I sold up at 108 and I haven't bought back in yet until like maybe October. And I was like, okay, you're running a Bitcoin exchange. I appreciate you telling us that like you believe in the 4-year cycle and that you honestly sold, at that time, which was a good decision for you, but also in the market context of if everybody's making, greed is good decisions of logic, then it makes a efficient market because everyone's logically, making good decisions. So I think the average retail consumer maybe got too bought into the hodl side of it and didn't realize the big dogs when they come to play in Bitcoin are going to be looking out for themselves.
Yeah. So I have some views on this. People use certain terms that I'm not a fan of. But what I will tell people, there's a couple words you do not hear in Bitcoin spaces. And universally, this is despised. You'll never hear the P word. The people are like, what's the P word? Oh, I took a profit. They're like, you took a profit. Well, then accuse this whole, well, then you have to pay taxes. I'm like, yeah, pay your taxes, take a profit, and go live your life. What's the sense of hodling something? People are like, I'm going to hodl Bitcoin, until I die and leave it to my kids. I'm like, yeah, they will cash that Bitcoin out immediately, assuming they could find it. And they will then go spend the money that you didn't have time to enjoy. So when somebody says they sold at the top, the default position is, oh, you sold everything. And what I've said throughout, I don't know, the past, I've been in Bitcoin now 9.5 years. I say sell 20%, pay your taxes, and go live your life. And they're like, what happens if Bitcoin goes to $1 million and you sold 20% of your stack? I go, well, first of all, you have 80% of your stack still left. And I always say to people, get yourself a really good car. And they're like, why would I get a good car? It's a depreciating asset. I'm like, well, you probably have to go drive to the store and get food and go on a vacation and take your kids to, school and sports. And you don't want to have a broken down piece of crap. And they're like, that's like terrible advice. And I'm like, no, you have a life to live. And so sell 10, 20, 30% when Bitcoin's at an all-time high. And then go live your life and pay off all your debt and take the family on a vacation. And people are like, oh, you'll think in the future. Look, I bought Bitcoin sub 2000, right? Yeah. And it's at 66 right now. So it's a 33x from here, or, from where I was. And it's like, oh, if you would have kept all that Bitcoin, you'd have more money. I go, it's been 9.5 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what I explain to people. And people are like, well, you shouldn't have to pay taxes. Taxes is stealing. Okay. I'm not moving out of the U.S. I thought about moving to Nevada to get out of state taxes, or move to Florida. My brother lives in Florida. I don't want to live in Florida. Yeah. But anyway, with that said, that's the way I look at this stuff. So I think that if you sell and book a profit, and if somebody says to you, you did that wrong, I would just ignore them. I would not engage. I would do this.
Have a Coca-Cola.
Just grab a Coke and be like, cool, let's talk about something else. You booking a profit is not wrong. And somebody's like, oh, you should just continue having losses. I'm like, what?
I know one of the first things we talked about when I saw you in New York was around, I had heard you on a Spaces talking about, trophies, and like you make a decent return on any type of investment is trying to have some sort of trophy, not always just chasing depreciating assets, but have something you can actually remember. Because we did well with, we were talking about DRAM in April, which is like the ETF around memory stocks.
The Roundhill, yes.
Yeah, from Roundhill. And so we did really well because we started buying in like late March and did well with like some Qualcomms and like other things with like this big CapEx build out. And so honestly, so obviously it was options, so sold those, and so I didn't even have to make a decision because they're going to expire anyways. And then use that for a family trip to go to a Bitcoin conference and take my whole family to a Bitcoin conference. But it's a memory. I'm not going to remember the price action or like maybe even the return on a trade, but you do remember the trophies that you choose to get with them.
Yeah, and I say it to some people. I just say, "What's your trophy?" And they're like, "I don't have any." I'm like, or that's, I don't believe in status things. I'm like, going on a family trip is not a status thing. That's you can't get back that time. And so anyway, so I say it to people, and listen for those words. And people will not say those words on Spaces. They will. The profit word never comes up because that automatically prompts, oh, then you it's called opportunity cost. You forego the increase in the value that could have happened, which is true. That's a real thing. And then they're like, you see what happens if 10 years from now, every Bitcoin's worth $10 million. You're like, okay, but I got to live that life. So, and I think for you, it was worth it, right? You did the family trip.
Yeah, we did a whole month. Had the 3-year-old, my wife, my mother, all there. So made it to Bitcoin Prague, and they had a great time.
Prague was awesome. I was at Prague last year, and as a city, it's phenomenal. That I stayed downtown. You saw the clock, right?
Yeah.
Everybody stands there to watch the little roosters that come.
Yeah. Hundreds
So,
of people.
but with that, so you wanted to talk about AI and how I
Yeah.
use AI and why it's a little bit different and how I use it to analyze things. I think I
Yeah.
think that could be useful, and I could be really specific about how I use AI. And I was watching the previous person how he talks about it. Is that, and you can shoot any question out at me.
Yeah, for the audience, we're not going to go to full backstory, but connected with Graham, I heard you on a space, but then also like you've been a part of True North. Jeff Walton's been on the show multiple times. We saw your presentation at True North World in Orlando. You mentioned Jeff Park, and Jeff Park was on the show before Ben Workman even got like super busy with it. So is Jeff and Ben. So what I loved at your presentation is you're using AI and a lot of the work and content you do since then to break down your own portfolio, complex positions with options. Most people don't know the Greeks. Even people that know the Greeks don't trade them well. That's why they're trading against Renaissance Technologies and Jim Simons and really smart logos. And then I think even for the average person to break down what Michael Saylor is saying, like with the digital credit, MNAV, compression, thinking about amplification and wrapping your head around some of these concepts that, what we've seen with True North and your guys' content has been, there's so much to unpack and think about that you really do need the help of AI to do so. So that's what I want to take your time today, not just talk about MSTR, but talk about how are you using that to make yourself a smarter investor?
Yeah. So I did write a book on AI, and I don't know, I sold 40 copies. So I didn't sell a lot. So let me explain about AI and LLMs and the distinction, and you could just jump in anytime. So AI is a collective term, artificial intelligence, and then most people engage with it as a large language model. And there's two ways that you can kind of engage with it. You could type in what you want to say, or you could speak into it. And I'll give a good example of this. And this goes back to second grade. I grew up in the US, so second grade. There's a thing called homonyms, two different words that are spelled differently that have two different meanings. People are like, what the hell does this have to do with an LLM? I'll give a good example. If I ask a question and the word can be spelled two different ways, two different meanings, then it operates differently. And a good word for this is cash. So if I ask a question about strategy and I say, hey, about their cash position, and then in a LLM, if I ask another question and say, I want you to load this into your cache. That word is CACHE.
Mm-hmm.
That's short-term memory that goes into the LLM. But those two words are pronounced in English exactly the same, cache. But they two different words mean two different things in two different contexts. People are like, well, where's this going? I'm like, hey, I'm talking to the LLM. Let's talk about strategy. It's like, oh, do you mean a plan in the future that you're going to get something done by a certain time frame? No, I mean the company formerly known as MicroStrategy with the stock symbol MSTR. That's the context and for it to understand something. So when I use, and how is this related, and why did some people do not get a good result out of AI, is because they don't query it, or the prompts, right, is the correct word. They don't have the articulation or sophistication to say, hey, I want to talk about leverage or specifically with strategy, to go back to this. And with leverage, there's two different versions of it. What's grain of salt talking about? Well, there's net debt leverage, which is you take the debt minus the cash, so $6.7 billion in convert debt, minus out $3.25 billion in cash, and that's your net debt, and that's, I think, 6% right now. That is one form of leverage. The other form of leverage is amplification. What's amplification? Well, that's digital credit. Strategy came with a term called digital credit, and that are the preferred shares. And those don't ever have to get paid back. So there's two forms of leverage. The converts, where there's a maturity date and there's a put price, right? And then there's the other form of leverage, which is amplification, which does not increase ADSO, assumed diluted shares outstanding. And everybody's like, dude, you just went too fast. I'm like, I didn't invent this. And strategy did not invent preferred shares. They've been around for 125 years. And they're perpetual also, this dividend.
Yeah.
So, and I like the compound, no one ever goes broke booking profits. Kudos, exactly right. So what I'm saying here to you is that when with a computer, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't, people are like, I use AI and I don't get a good answer. And I'm like, tell me what your prompts are. And they're like, well, now you're being a jerk. I'm like, no, your prompts are probably just not sophisticated. Now, if you query AI to say, hey, the company strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, explain to me the difference between the perpetual prefs and their debt on the balance sheet, then it can explain it to you. That's how I use AI. And people are like, oh, this makes a difference? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, so just chime in.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we'll shout out to Voyager real quick. Actually, I bought both the Grains books. Both books
well,
are great.
thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, like you got some readership in the audience. So on this side, and this ties in really well to what Jordan and I've talked about a lot, is how you know, when you're sending out a prompt, it's going to, you know, a cloud server, it's going to go get processed in a data center somewhere, and it's your data going out and sitting there and getting, you know, manipulated. What you just mentioned was around strategy and thinking around, you know, digital credit, amplification. What is your process, or how do you think about sensitive data, sensitive financial data, and how would that like come into play? Also, I'll mention that like I have my own like Hermes agent that I connected to Robinhood, you know, via the MCP connection, and so he can read my entire options portfolio. He can read the Greeks. He can tell me. He sends me a note every morning. Hey, this position's decaying by like $3,500 every day. I'm like, oh, that's way worse than I've ever. You think about it when you put it that way. But most people aren't getting that data. They don't know about like what the actual decay looks like, and slapping them in the face saying like, you should probably sell this because it's not going to get in the money anytime soon. How much, like, how are you worried about that? Are you concerned?
So a couple things. I don't so personal data that I upload to AI, I take out any reference to my name in the actual screenshots of the data.
Yeah.
So it could assume that this means that it's me. Usually AI is supposed to strip out the personal identifiable information, but you have to assume that it doesn't. So I will make sure in any screenshots, and I don't have AI hooked up to any of my accounts directly. But this is what, yeah, thanks. And this is what I do that's different than most people. So if you go into TradingView, and should I show how this works, or can I do that?
Yeah, let's rip it. We love visuals here.
Yeah, so let me see. I will share my desktop. Let's make sure.
Make sure to MPI.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. So I will share slides. Share screen. Allow to share window. Oh, hold on 1 second. I'll fix this.
Yeah. And then while you're waiting, I'm going to pull up this, put it in the chat, log scale investments, pull up a link to your book.
Thanks. Yeah. So share screen, allow share window. Give me one. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. I don't usually use StreamYard.
Always need the permissions.
Let me see if I can. Okay, now I should be able to get it to work. StreamYard. It will not let me. Okay, share screen.
I'll flash this real quick.
Share window.
All right, so we got 2 books on here.
Got it. Oh yeah. So there you could get and down at the bottom you could either buy the book on Amazon Kindle. The benefit of the PDF file is that you could download the PDF file and import it directly into AI and say, what's the point he's trying to get across? So that's the part I love about that, is that, and then I have a little video, it's whatever, say 7-8 minutes long, that covers this. So that's the website. But
so please tell me you have your own internal brain that's called the grain brain of just markdown files.
The grain brain.
The grain brain should be a thing.
You want to hear one of the dumbest things that people say to me is they're like, I tell them, yeah, I have my own business called Log Scale Investments, and they're like, what does it have to do with trees? And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
I'm like, it doesn't have anything to do with trees. I'm like, why do you call it log? I'm like,
Yeah.
it means logarithmic. It's a scale. So let me show you why would I use AI is fundamentally different than probably most people. I believe in structured data, and people are like, what the hell is structured data? And a good example of it is right here. So if I'm in TradingView, right, and I don't know why people don't know this. If I click on these three dots, it says over here table view, and you're like, now you can see a table view. So if I like, whether it's 1 hour, 4 hour, whatever the daily candle, daily, weekly, monthly candles. And then I like RSI, relative strength indicator, MACD, moving average convergence, divergence, and I hit table view. And so I obviously I can paste a screenshot, but the cool part is if you look over here in the upper left-hand corner, it says download data, and you hit download data, download this. So now it downloads it to my computer. I think that if you have TradingView, the free version, you could do this.
Yeah.
Or you can go to Yahoo or Google, whatever other site. So now when I analyze data, so this is the incredibly important part. And I'll stop sharing for this part here. So look, if you say to AI, hey, get me the daily prices of Bitcoin going back 10 years. You don't know what the timestamp is. Did it take the data from 2 months ago? What is the latest data that it used? It uses a cached version. Now we get back to that same word, CACHE. It takes the cached version that's loaded into AI, which you didn't ask what it is, and then you ask it a bunch of questions, but you don't know what the underlying data source is. So then you ask it to do a bunch of questions, and then you get like drift, and you're like, what? And you're like, well, you don't know the data source. I know my data source because I have a CSV file, comma separated values that I downloaded, and I know it's as of 10:56 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I know I picked the daily chart, MACD, RSI. I picked it and I downloaded it and I gave it to it and I said, now based upon this file, I want you to analyze this. And people are like, well, how do you know it's doing this? I'm like, what happens is if you give it the data and it starts going out and reading a whole bunch of websites, no, you hit the stop button and go, why are you looking at a whole bunch of websites when I gave you the data?
Yeah.
And everybody, this has no math. And people are like, that's what structured data is? I go, yeah. And that's why I get better results than other people. Not because I'm smarter, is because I'm garbage in, garbage out. I'm giving it clean data in a structured CSV file from a known source that I trust, right? And I give it to it, and now I analyze that. And it doesn't matter whether it's Greeks. It doesn't matter if it's any data. If you don't know that, and people are like, well, I asked it 10 questions, and it came back with crap. I go, what data did it use? I'm like, I don't know. It gave me 20 links. I go, you look at this 20 links? No. I go, that's why you got crappy results. You don't know what garbage it picked up on.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these models and data sets are from the past. You'll ask a question and be surprised by, oh, here's the latest of 2024. And it's a good wake up call to say, oh, wait, so everything I've been asking has been answered with 2024 information? Like, so.
If you go into any of your now, some are better than others, like Perplexity. I use ChatGPT and then I test it in Grok.
Yeah.
And you can use Claude, whatever it is. But if you say, hey, how many Bitcoin does the company formerly known as MicroStrategy have, right? How much Bitcoin do they have? Sometimes it comes back and says, well, they have 422,000. You're like, what?
Yeah.
It should be, now you should know that it should be somewhere above 800,000. You're like, you're using out of date data. And so that's a big difference between me and most people. The other thing is that I ask AI, what are the prompts to do things? So I get good data and I have it make a graph, and I know X, Y. X is time, Y is going to be price. It could be MNAV, it could be price, and Bitcoin per share. And I can represent it in linear and log scale. And the same thing on the X-axis in time. Time is usually in linear scale, but if you believe in the power law, you want to do time in log scale. People are like, dude, you just went too fast. I'm like, dude, we've been talking about log scale for hence the name of my business.
Yeah.
for better part of a decade, right? And on a log scale, then you get a power law trend if it's at a 45-degree angle about that. And then there's some R squared. This is a gross oversimplification. But most people are like, how do you know this? I'm like, not how do you not know this? So when I then tell it to go make a graph, and I will go to my website, I will show you now how this works. Share screen, share window. Okay. So here, I'm going to do this live. I'm going to go to grain of salt and let me scroll down. Here's a good
That's the thing.
example.
You talked about like the data set. Not enough people are doing that. You need to put in a little bit of work, but you need to think of anything you're doing, build enough data set. And so much of the shift in the past couple months is not around context engineering. It's not around prompt engineering of making the best prompt that's 2 pages long. It's around context engineering. And we've had the past 2 weeks talked about like company brains and having, these huge sets of markdown files, but it is night and day. Changed my day-to-day work of just using really good, fresh context that's been vetted as good, insightful data.
Yeah, so let me back up for a second. So the last job I had, which was about 3 years ago, and I've pretty much been fully retired since then, and I was retired once before in 2022, whatever. So anyway, and then I went back to work. And so I was working at IBM, and they didn't automate one of the things on the cloud system, and I was running this thing. And so every month and quarter, I had to run these reports that had to be done manually. So I'll be very brief. So I would export it off of the mainframe computer. They had middleware in place, and this is not the old days. This is like 3-4 years ago. And I would take it from the data warehouse. And I found out that in Excel, there's a limit of about 1.15 million rows in a worksheet. So, and I had 2 full alphabets out. So I had more than 1 million rows times 52 columns, right? So I had 52 million data points. And I would then summarize that into a chart like you see like right here. Because nobody cares about it. I'm going to show you reverse. I'm going to show you the output and how I build something. And this is how I learned in my job. Again, my degree's in economics, but I was a tech guy for 23 years. So on here for strategy for Bitcoin per share, I think that the average price that they quote is bullshit. And the reason why is because everybody adds up the total Bitcoin and they divide it by the number of Bitcoin and say this is the average for Bitcoin. That's not true. They were all bought at different MNAVs. Sometimes, so the Bitcoin was bought at 3 MNAV versus 1 MNAV. So that is completely different in terms of an average price because it's like a weighted average. And so I produced this and I gave you the information here. I did it over time. X-axis is in time. And then we show how it ramps up. And then I have different bar charts and I show this. And I calculated that because they have grown by 3.72x, really we should divide that and it's about $20,000 is the net result of what their average purchase price is, not the price that's quoted on their website. And somebody's like, okay, but how did I get this? And then I said, if you don't agree with my math, this is the important part. Then if you click on this, if somebody's like, you want to fight with me? Here. And this is the structured data.
Yeah.
So when I generate a bar chart, if you talk to anybody that creates a bar chart, well, how do I know your data is good? I'm like, there's my data. Download my data into the AI of your choice, give it the final one, the summary, give it the data and say, is grain of salt right or wrong? And what's happened over the past year and a half since I've been using AI, the most common thing happens is, well, your math is correct. I just don't agree with your narrative. I go, oh, so you have an opinion. And they're like, Well, no, my opinion's a fact. I go, okay, well, give me your data. Well, I don't have any data. You're using my data because you said that my data was correct. I'm like, then you just have an opinion. That's okay to have an opinion, but call an opinion opinion. Somebody's like, Grant, I think you're wrong. I'm like, well, this is how I did it.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm not a data researcher. I'm not a database expert. I'm a guy that I learned how to use Excel, I don't know, whenever it came out. I don't know, 1998 when I started first using Excel. I'm so old I use Claris Works on a Mac. I never used VisiCalc.
Yeah.
I mean, so a spreadsheet, and so this is what I say to people, and this is why when somebody tells me they're using AI, what I say to them is, how do you define your rows and columns? And they're like, rows and columns? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, how did you construct your data so you can make this nice bar chart? And they're like, anybody that's used Excel and makes a bar chart knows that you can do a pivot table and you can flip the data because you want the bars. I'm going to tell everybody a secret here. You ready for the secret?
I don't know. Alpha.
In Silicon Valley, it's always up and to the right.
It's true.
No matter how you make a chart, it's always got to be up and to the right. It's always got to go up. So if you make a chart and it's not up and to the right, everybody's like, dude, get this clown out of here, because nobody's going to invest in that.
Yeah.
It's going to be an orphan product. Anyway, so with that said, since you already know that, you have to construct the rows and tables. Again, you're not lying with the data. The data is the data, but you're representing it in a certain way. And that's why my results out of AI is somebody's like, well, if somebody ever says to you, hey, explain something, well, it's going to take about 3 hours. I'm like, you don't understand what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah. What
you can't do it in 2 minutes. Go ahead.
So a lot of on the digital credit thesis really is in what Saylor's talked about is like a 30% compounding annual growth rate. So taking a step back, let's say you're new to investing in the space and you're using these tools and this experience of analyzing the data. How would you, I mean, you can obviously you can find the right data set to defend that, but how do you think about that going forward in the future? Like, how do you test that of that it continues, that adoption it continues in the same way?
Again, I think examples are great. So I will continue to do examples here.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna answer your question.
Yeah.
You said, based upon history, what do I think is going to happen in the future? That's the reason why we do this analysis. That's why I do this analysis. I have this history. When you're looking at this page right now, this is a snapshot. You see, it just changed. Every 15 seconds, this page updates, and it tells you the implied volatility. It tells you the net leverage is 6%. The amplification is 40%. And every 15 seconds, you'll see the price, MSTR price will update, okay? So this just shows you one point in time. On this, if I go over here to charts, and again, this is sometimes people don't get this. If you go over here, there's a little down caret, and you could pick, you can do, oh my God, they now have a BT reserve. This is a new chart. I did not know this existed.
They've been putting
Sorry, no, this is BTC reserve. This was always here. Now
Rohan join them has been doing some work, which is good to see.
Yeah. So now when you look at this, so the BTC reserve on the previous one shows you whatever, $55 billion. Yeah. That's a snapshot. What this is showing you is a path metric. And as you drag your cursor along on this, let me switch to this. As you drag it along, you can see it goes 4 billion, 2 billion, 6 billion. And then something happened right over here in 2024. It went from 17 billion, right, to 43 billion, literally in almost no time. That was in 2024. And that's the BT. So this is a path metric. Yeah. People are like, snapshot, path, grain. This shit doesn't make any sense. I'm going to make it real simple. This is video. Think about it. This is video. When I go to this page, That's a picture. A video shows you something happens over time. I ran down the street. That's a video. This is a snapshot. It shows you right here what's the BTC reserve. It's 55,667,000,000. But the other one tells a completely different story. It shows what happened over time. And when you look at this one, when you look at the chart, now over here, this is like, hey, what the hell happened here in 2024, right? And that's when the MNAV shot up, and there was just a lot of things happened in 2024. So what caused that big spike? So again, the information, one's a snapshot, one's a path metric. Now the question is, what's going to happen in the future? Well, if you don't understand what I just did right here, it becomes harder. And let me explain, this is the difference. The future is probabilistic. And you're like, what do you mean probabilistic? Well, we could analyze all the data going back very easily. That's very easy to do. The hard part is to say, probabilistically, is there a 50-50 chance that this is going to happen, or an 80% chance? Like if you buy an out of the money call on something, if it's 10% out of the money and you have 90, 120 days out, there's a good chance that'll end up in the money, provided things are bullish. But if the stock is trading at $100 and you buy a $300 out of the money call, I mean, that's a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
If it's stock's trading at $100 and you're buying an out of the money call and the strike price is 110, it's 10% out of the money. You want it to go to 120. You want it to be in the money. That's what captures the full gamma, the full sweep. And then that's a good thing. And if what I just said right there is too hard to understand for people, it's like, then don't buy options. So, and then you have to take into account volatility and time decay, like you were saying. So I think that when I look at something, I articulate the difference between video and a snapshot and one thing like this. So I look at it differently. And I'll give you another example. This page, this is a path metric. This is showing you every single transaction. By the way, what is missing from this page is the cash raises. But you can infer it on this page when you see the parentheses around, the 225 over here, the BTC acquisition. That means they sold it, right?
Yeah.
And the BTC yield went negative for the quarter. And I want to back up for a second here. So this page, and this was my suggestion back to strategy, was on this page, or you should make another page for cash.
Yeah.
And you should show that when you sell MSTR for cash, it should be listed on this page. How much Bitcoin does it buy? It buys 0 Bitcoin. And there should be a column here. Again, back to rows and columns, right? Each row is a transaction. Each column is the metric. And you should have a column for cash. The only way you can look up cash on strategies page is to go to the 8Ks. And people are like, what? I'm like, so they don't have a cash page. It's missing. The only way that you could look at cash, and just chime in if this is not helpful, the only way to look at cash is you go back to this page, and it says over here, USD reserve, 3,225,000,000. But it's not showing you how it changed over time. It's just giving you that one snap. And so I made a chart for that on grain of salt. And I said, you guys should do this. So anyway, so is this helpful or not helpful?
No, this is helpful. I think the thing that we're like seeing is it really takes a lot, right? To understand. And there's like obviously a lot of education, and True North, I think, has obviously been built around so much of, hey, here's this whole new beast that's new to Bitcoin education. So, the amount of people that know about Bitcoin, the amount of people that, get into the treasury side and understand digital credit's even smaller. And one thing I was going to show real quick.
Before you go, can I show you one thing that I was talking about? And this was, so I could calculate. This stuff is not hard for me to calculate.
Yeah.
Look, I could do this all in Excel. AI. So let me back up for a second. So there's two ways there's a few different ways to look at productivity. You could look at I look at productivity two simple ways. I could say I can get, for the same input, I get 10 times the output. That's a 10x gain. Or I do one thing of input and I get 5 out. It multiplies it by 5. What AI has done for me is that all of the tables that I can do, I could do that manually in Excel. And if something would take me 100 minutes to do it myself, I could do it in less than 10 minutes with AI. So my productivity it now takes me 1/10 the time to do something. I'm not doing 10 times as much stuff. It takes me 1/10 the time to do something. So that's a 10x improvement in my productivity. That's the benefit.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And I want to talk about amplification, then we'll go to what you just said. So I made this chart here on amplification. And again, I made all the columns so people can read it. Assuming the debt and the prefs stay the same. Let's assume that they don't add in any. Let's assume that strategy doesn't do anything. They don't buy any more Bitcoin. They just leave it as. If the price of Bitcoin doubles, right, amplification gets cut in half. People are like, what? As the price of Bitcoin goes up, amplification goes lower. Now that isn't, because you have less leverage. You have more equity value because the price of Bitcoin went up. And that's what this chart means to tell you here. And so what you're saying is, why is this complex? Many metrics, like Bitcoin per share, you always want that to go up. MNAV, you rather have a higher MNAV than a lower MNAV. But with amplification, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, which is a good thing, amplification drops. And then you start to fly, and then you have stretch buy more Bitcoin. And what this chart shows you here is basically it goes from almost 40% down to 20% if you don't turn back on the stretch flywheel. But on these two columns, if you want to keep it static at 40% amplification, you have to continue buying Bitcoin. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So the metric is, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, it drops, which is a good thing. And then you can continue to buy Bitcoin. So you want to keep it about 40%. Strive, and it's the only other company with a perpetual pref, is they have zero debt and they're running 60% amplification.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that said, go ahead to your question.
Yeah. Well, this is actually one thing I was going to pull up today. I think that, having people understand, it's not just saying it one time. It's like, and I love visuals. I'm a big use of Claude Fable. Please create a PDF visual so I can show my team exactly what I'm doing here, because it does explain so much easier. I think showing the need to continue buying Bitcoin, that it is part of the strategy. If Saylor wants to keep it at amplification level, he's going to have to keep buying. And he's demonstrated for years that he's willing to buy even during tough periods, even when it's high, when it's low. But understanding this is like what you're getting. In the case for why Bitcoin treasury over spot Bitcoin, for the type of investor that wants amplification, this is the why behind it, is because he's going to be driven to do so. I thought that your post has been good, and that's one of the reasons triggered around wanting to ask around AI is you breaking down, here's what I would do if I was strategy. And what has been, for the audience that's less familiar, what's been your thoughts in the evolution of how you think about the cash? Is it a drag? Is it necessary for institutions to get involved and feel comfortable with it? How has that, thought process evolved for you, seeing what they're doing, raising the cash reserve to pay? Because if you're a Bitcoiner, you understand, Bitcoin's going up. But then for other investors, it's also understanding, okay, they need some comfort around what the cycle is and can they pay these dividends out in the future. They don't, prefs are a unique concept, right, in their own right.
So I've told this before. I keep on telling the same story. So I met Saylor almost 2 years ago, and Phong. And when I first met Saylor, I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm a big shareholder in strategy." I told him how many shares I had. And I told him, I said, "I'm grain of salt on X." He goes, "I have no idea who you are." I'm like, "Okay." And I shake his hand. I took a picture with him, and he says, "Thank you for your support." And then I introduced him to Ryan McGinnis, Raekwon. And so we were there. This was over 2 years ago. It was at Strategy World. So they know who I am, obviously. And so what happened is I was at the Bitcoin conference, and they had the first time they had a booth. And so they were at the booth, and I know the people on investor relations there. So I walk over to the booth and I'm talking to them, and Phong is there. This is, again, a public setting. This is not a private meeting, public setting. And there's a group of people waiting to talk to Phong. And this is about cash. And so there's a whole line to meet him. And I said, hey, I want to ask Phong a quick question. Let me get in line. So there's like 3 people in front of me, and they're talking to Phong. And Phong sees me, and he's like, hey, Grain, come over here. And now I'm kind of embarrassed because I'm cutting the line. And a few people recognized who I am. And I said, Phong, how are you doing? He's like, I'm doing great. I'm like, you have your little space here in the exhibit. Yeah, it's the first time we're doing it. We're talking to people. It's great. I said, hey, I just have a quick question for you. How do you view cash? And he goes, well, Grain, we're long Bitcoin and short cash. Now, this is in April, right, of this year. So they had already started the whole cash thing. And I said, yeah, I know that, but do you think about buying it like lump sum or a little bit over time? What's the management of the cash? What's your strategy for the cash? He goes, we can raise any amount of cash anytime we need it. I said, Phong, thank you so much for your time. Totally appreciate it. Shake his hand. He goes, you're going to be at the party later? Yeah, I'll meet you at the party later, Phong. That's great. And everybody's like, what just happened? What he told me was, even in the terms of a down market, at that point, Bitcoin was over 80,000, that they could sell MSTR shares to raise cash that they need. That's what he said to me. Public setting, this was not a secret, and they have consistently shown that they can do this. And people have said, in a down market, the capital markets won't be open to strategy. That is completely untrue. And so the evolution, now prior to December of 2025, strategy had somewhere between $20 to $40 million in working cash, and nobody cared about it. And then in December 2025, they made a decision, and over the course of 6 weeks, they acquired $2.25 billion of Bitcoin. I think that's what allowed Stretch to be so successful. And then initially, they had like 32 months of coverage, but because the dividend payments were so much lower, then when Stretch became successful, the dividend payments dropped, and they bought back the converts. The market did not like that. And then on June 1st, the price of Bitcoin basically dropped from 75,000, and it hit 59,000 a couple of weeks later. So May 10th, we're at 82,000, and that's Bitcoin. Hell, Bitcoin can lose 30% of its value in 3 days. And everybody's like, well, that's not fun. So anyway, so how do we look at cash? I believe what Phong said. And the most important thing that they said was, there's 2 videos of Phong that are recent. He posted them. And now in retrospect, how do you look at buying back the converts? And they look, in retrospect, we did not see the price of Bitcoin dropping like the way it did. And they kind of got penalized, that's the word I'm using, for using up some of their cash, dropping down to like less than 6 months of dividend coverage.
Yeah.
So now they're back up to 22 months of dividend coverage. And I think cash is incredibly important. So a long-winded answer to your question about cash, but I think that's why I told you at the beginning, every 3, 6, 9 months, everything is different in Bitcoin world.
It's a good point. I mean, I think there's a side of it where it's good to hold people to the words, but it's a dynamic market. Bitcoin's price changing. Also, the Overton window of what institutional investors will accept is changed so much, right? Like Gary Gensler's gone. People are looking at, you have Warshin, who isn't necessarily like cutting rates immediately, but you're in this regime where it's much more Bitcoin friendly. You don't have the big, will Bitcoin get banned concerns. Russia this week just announced, they're moving forward with pro Bitcoin legislation. Like the writing's on the wall in the sense that where you don't have these boogeymen, like, the quantum fear comes and goes, but there's a lot of good reasons that you have to be on your toes and nimble. Right?
So a couple of things. I was watching a video from Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, on Shark Tank.
Wears 2 watches. Who is he? Oh, you wear 2 watches. When do I get to that level? Is that like the 50 Bitcoin level, 100 Bitcoin
there's
level?
data and there's trophy. So look, with that said, so what Kevin O'Leary said, he keeps a large cash position at all times. And he was doing an interview with Graham Stevens, the guy that's got a lot of YouTube followers. He was a real estate guy and he sold all his real estate.
Yeah.
And I respect both of them highly. And he said to Graham, he goes, at some point when you get a net worth, pick a net worth, $10 million, right? And if your net worth is $10 million and you have a lot of debt, at some point he goes, you know what, just pay off the debt and keep a bunch of cash. And he's like, no, but leverage is an asset. And Kevin O'Leary's like, because Kevin O'Leary's probably about my age. I'm 59. Kevin O'Leary's probably 60 something, right about there. Kevin's like, yeah, pretty much in a downturn, you want to be sitting on a pile of cash so you can go lever up when things basically go to crap. And Graham was like, oh. If you're levered when the market is high and then it drops, your leverage goes way up because you don't have any cash sitting around. What Kevin was saying is you want to have a bunch of cash laying around so when the market goes to crap, that's when you lever up when prices are low because then you have the upside optionality. And he's like, at some point you're going to have to pay taxes and, sell and get rid of your debt. And then you have a pile of cash and then you look to redeploy it when things were low. And it clicked in Graham's head. And I think, Fred Krueger wrote an article about strategy. Is Michael Saylor it wasn't really about strategy, Michael Saylor. Is he the new John D. Rockefeller? There were two main points in the article. One was the conspiracy theory concept was strategy will acquire so much Bitcoin that the government will have to take a stake in it or break them up.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a
Talk about that a
conspiracy
bit, yeah.
Okay. The second thing that he said is that John D. Rockefeller was making so much cash that whenever there was a downturn in the price of oil, he would just buy up the competitors. Yeah. He would just come in and buy, it's the proverbial, I'll buy you at 30 cents on the dollar. And the cash is what gave that optionality. And people are like, you see, John D., anybody has a lot of cash, they're taking advantage of people. This is where people get schizophrenic on the internet. Cash is a melting ice cube and it's cash is trash. On the flip side, if you have a bunch of cash and the market goes to crap, Warren Buffett, the great financial crisis happens in 2009. The federal government goes to him. They're like, hey, do you want to buy whatever the Lehman Brothers or whichever one that he bought? He was able to buy it out for like 5 cents on the dollar. And he's like, I'm getting an asset at a 95% discount. You could sell off the parts and make more. You don't even have to let it. He's saving it from bankruptcy, and then he can run it up because Warren Buffett comes in, and then he can sell off the pieces. It's not bankruptcy. This all happened, leverage buyouts. This is all old stuff. Anyway, to answer your question here about this, about cash, I think there's phenomenal optionality. And when somebody says, I think strategy, I wrote a post on this. If they get $6.7 billion in cash, their net leverage is zero. They don't have to get rid of the converts. Yep. You've got $6.7 billion in converts, $6.7 billion in cash. What's your net debt? Zero. They both cancel. 6.7 minus positive 6.7 is zero.
I think the market's enjoyed SATA, right, as the other pref from Strive because they have no debt, right? They're small, they have no debt, easy to understand, mechanics of it. And then, it's back up to 98, 99 right now versus Stretch taking a little bit longer to do so.
And that's the coolest part about this is that we have another Bitcoin treasury company, Strive, that their debt is zero. And they're sitting on, about $140 million in cash. And I've had this conversation publicly with Jeff Walton. I said, you should show your net debt is negative $120 million. And he's like, what? I go, well, your debt is zero and you have to minus out your cash. So your net debt leverage is negative number, which is a good thing. And he's like, no, we can't report. I'm like, you can't, it's legit. I didn't make up this formula. It's debt minus the cash. And so for strategy, there's right now is 6%. I think for other Bitcoin treasury companies, where they got caught was if you have 20, 30, 40% in debt, that is a big claim on your Bitcoin. So if you have 10,000 Bitcoin and you have 40% in debt, you really don't have 10,000 Bitcoin. You have 6,000 like, Green, you just went too fast. I'm like, well, 6,000 is 60% at 10,000 and 40% you have in debt. Debt is higher in the capital stack. It's got to be paid back first. So you have the 10,000 Bitcoin, but 40% of it is encumbered, pledged as collateral or higher in the capital stack in the event that you guys have a problem. And what we've seen in this downturn over the past few days, right? It's like, you got to think about this. And so, by the way, this is the cruel part of formulas. I said before, when you look at amplification, right? Or debt, it's pretty much the same thing for debt or amplification. But if all things stay the same, if you have debt and the price of Bitcoin doubles, right, then your debt gets cut in, it doesn't get cut in half, but as a percentage of your equity, it gets cut in half. Everybody's like, yeah, Graham, we totally get that. Yeah, you're like, oh, what happens if Bitcoin drops 50%? And they're like, oh, my fucking leverage doubles. I'm like, that's the way the math works. I'm doing 2 and 1 and 1 in, 1 over 2 versus 2 over 1. The formula works in both directions. And so that's why when the price of Bitcoin drops right now, we're seeing a lot of Bitcoin treasury comes under stress, because their leverage, right, that they had in the form of debt, because Bitcoin has been cut in half from 126 to 66, their leverage has doubled. And you're like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah.
Go now.
Have to ask.
Right?
Have to ask Satsuma yesterday, right? Like Satsuma sold all their Bitcoin. I think they're shutting down the company. Also, Jack Mallers stepping down and announcing that he's no longer CEO of XXI 21. What are your thoughts on both of these? And then what treasury companies are you looking at besides Strategy and Strive, or are those the two that you just devote your time to?
So let's go through each of them. Look, I want all Bitcoin treasury companies to be successful. That's my goal. You did not hear the word durable come up, or the word efficient. You can't. A good example of this was what's in my book, and there's a 7-minute video for free that you can watch on 1.5x speed and be done in 3 minutes. But I'll sum it up right now. Strategy has about 400 million shares, and they have 840,000 Bitcoin. Let's just round it out to 800,000 Bitcoin. If your company has 40,000 Bitcoin and 4 times as many shares as Strategy, your efficiency kind of sucks. And that's what's in the book. It's like, you're not very efficient. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Well, if you have, we'll use a simple number, you have 40,000 Bitcoin. So you have 1/20th of the Bitcoin Strategy, because 20 times 40,000 is 800,000. And you have 4 times as many shares. You're 1/80th as efficient. And people are like, I don't get it. It's like, okay, Strategy is getting 80 miles to the gallon and you're getting 1. And people are like, oh. And what happened is that's represented in sats per share. Strategy has 200,000 sats per share. There are other companies that have sub 1,000 sats per share. It's 1/200th of the efficiency. People are like, I don't get it. It's like Strategy's getting 200 miles to the gallon and you're getting 1. And everybody's like, well, that car sucks. Right? And so anyway, with that said, so a company like Satsuma, Mark Moss, I want them to be successful. The best thing about Bitcoin is you can sell $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on a Saturday night. Worst thing about Bitcoin is you could sell $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on a Saturday night. So it's much easier. Instead of paying lawyers, you're like, hey, you go to the lawyers, look, we're just going to liquidate the company. We'll sell the Bitcoin, the liquid, we'll get this money. We'll do whatever we have to do to avoid a shareholder lawsuit, keep some money in reserves for that. We'll pay off the shareholders proportional to how many shares they had, and we'll walk away from this. What's a good thing about Bitcoin? It's very liquid. What's a bad thing? It's like we can just fold up the company. It's easier to do that. Yeah. So that happened. Jack Mallers. I said this before. I was in 2021. I was in Miami Bitcoin conference with Tim Kotzman. We had just met Lynn Alden for the first time in person, and we were in the audience. And we had just met her, and I said, "Hey, Tim, this is you know who this is? This is Lynn Alden. She's famous." And she was like, "Oh my God," it was like a total fanboy meeting her. So anyway, and I've met her a couple times since then. Anyway, with that said, 20 minutes later, Jack Mallers goes on stage and says, "Hey, El Salvador's buying Bitcoin, and they're going to have Bitcoin bonds." So that's 5 years ago. And I was following him for a year. I've been following Jack for 6 years. I wish him the most amount of success. But then when he said, "Hey, strategy, there's two different types." He says this in Prague. You were in Prague.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, wait, there's two different MNAVs, and Bitcoin per share keeps on going up. Why is there two MNAVs and they're going down and Bitcoin per share is going up?" And Saylor's like, "Those measure two different things." And he's like, "Well, NYDIG has this report." I'm like, "Okay, I read the NYDIG report. NYDIG report is correct." I'm like, as a corporate CEO, you can't ask a question like that in public to be like, "I don't understand MNAV." And these are all public things that I'm saying about Jack. So then Jack releases a product where you could borrow against Bitcoin for Strike. And I'm like, "Okay, great." And it has a certain term, whatever the term is.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I would really like it if, it would be great if we could loan on like 100-year term. That would be great." And by the way, for context, Jack is like, "I don't get prefs." He just said that publicly. And then he says 3 weeks later, "It'd be great if we can loan on a 100-year term." Somebody else, it wasn't me, then writes in response, "Oh, STRC has just entered the chat." And I'm like, that's exactly what STRC is. Perpetual. You never have to pay back the loan. It's not even a loan. It's viewed as a hybrid. It's credit. And he didn't get it. And he said this publicly. And I was like, it's all right. I want to tell you something. I'm going to say something to everybody. If you don't understand something, that is totally okay. Just choose whether you're going to say that publicly at an event and ask a multi-billionaire that, "Hey, I don't get something," that may have unintended or second order consequences. I don't think he got fired because of that, but it wasn't a good look, right? And I wish him much success. I truly do.
Yeah, that's a really good point of, I think if you flipped it on its head of, there's concerns, from people just looking into the Strike loan of like, what happens when the interest rate spikes up? Do people understand that? If Saylor would have got on stage and asked those same questions and sowed doubt or FUD, in people's minds about this new Strike loan product, it would have wrecked the product. Like nobody is going to be taking out a thing. And so in the same way, Jack, you can't just keep using Saylor as a punching bag just because you always need an enemy in the Bitcoin space, or it makes you look like a hardcore Bitcoiner to push back on it. It always seems strange where he sat in the conversation on treasury.
So I want to talk about Saylor for a minute and say, look, I think the guy is brilliant, and whether it's in sports or it's in any type of athletics, the people who are really good at something. When you are phenomenally good at something, you make it look easy, right? People are like, "Why does a basketball, why does a basketball player get paid millions of dollars a year? Steph Curry." Well, if you could shoot 3-pointers like Steph Curry, then you would get paid $1 million a year. Because you can't do that, you don't get paid that way. So Saylor made his Bitcoin treasury that he has the best efficiency, right? The most amount of Bitcoin per share, the most amount of Bitcoin. And he's been doing it for 114 transactions over 6 years. He made it look kind of easy. The other thing about Saylor is that he has a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. People are like, "What does that matter?" I'm like, well, when you build an airplane and you make a mistake, somebody's got to go take that plane up and do a test flight. And if part of the system doesn't work right, you better hope you have a parachute, right? Yeah. So Saylor thinks about it as a system. We've got engines, we've got wings, we've got a rudder, we've got the rear stabilizers, the ailerons, all these different things, how a plane flies, right? We have 2 engines versus 1 engine. So if one engine goes bad, the other one could fly it, right?
Yeah.
And so he thinks about things as a system. Jack's question was, I want to talk to you about it one parameter at a time. Let's talk about MNAV. Okay. And then he goes, now let's talk about Bitcoin per share. He did not talk about the interrelationship between those two things. And when Saylor thinks about an airplane or a rocket, it's like, you're like, oh my God, all the systems have to work. I have to have good controls, navigation, the wings, the rudder, the stabilizer fins, the engines. I have to carry enough fuel to go a certain distance. I need to have a buffer in case I get caught in a holding pattern. Whatever it is, I have to take into account the weight that's on the airplane. They're like, oh, it's just not, does the plane fly? It's like, how big are I'm going to buy the plane with the biggest engines. Okay, you're going to have the worst fuel economy. You're not going to make it across the Pacific. So there's always interrelationship between all these metrics. And so most conversations, everybody talks about one metric. They're like, what's your revenue growth, or what's the price change in Bitcoin? And Saylor thinks about things as a system. And I want to leave one last point of this. I wrote a post on this. When you break, it takes a lot of energy to break the sound barrier. Once you break the sound barrier, whatever speed it is, 700 miles an hour, whatever altitude you're at, you could throttle back. This is the key part. People are like, what do you mean? No. This is the crazy part about airplanes. And you can look this up.
Yeah.
You go into super cruise mode. People are like, oh, you mean like fucking like on a Tesla? No. On a jet, you take off, you hit a little bit of the afterburners, you break the sound barrier. Once you break that level, then you throttle back, take off the afterburners, and you go into like this hyper cruise mode where it takes you less power, because now that you broke through the threshold, you could slow down, you could use less power to maintain that. People are like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's a thing called the Concorde. It flew from Paris to JFK Airport in under 4 hours. And how did it have the fuel to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Once it broke the sound barrier, they throttled back. And everybody's like, that's thinking like a system. And people don't realize you have this revenue growth, and then you want it to be durable. You don't want to fucking crash halfway across the ocean. And I think what happened is with a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies, they got the capital formation correct, and then they kind of went like this. Whereas strategy, they have now shifted. Oh, cash is important. You see how we come back to the whole thing? Yeah. Amplification, MNAV, cash. It's just not one. It's how does it all tie together? Anyway, so with that said, there's very few people that get this. I think that you get it. I think that a lot of people don't think about this, and it became complex now.
It is complex, and I think it's why Bitcoin podcasters are still in business. And I think there's a lot with the community. I think to bring back to like developing thought. Right? We started this conversation around like the P word profit shouldn't be horrible, because if you want Bitcoin to be money, you're not people that hold real estate. They don't blink an eye when they need to sell something. They say, hey, like I am going to do a 1031 exchange.
No, but let me comment on real estate.
Yeah.
Typically, look, I'm a person that has made, I bought a house in California. I lived in it for 14 years, and I just missed making $1 million on that house in 14 years. I made like $980,000.
Yeah.
Right. And people are like, you made $980,000. I'm like, yeah. And when I sold that house in 2018 in Santa Clara, Silicon Valley, the house was 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
And it sold for $1.4 million. It sold for $200,000 over asking price.
Insane.
Okay. And at that point, it was January of 2018. And what happened was I bought a much larger house that I then eventually don't have. But what happened is in Santa Clara County, because 2017 was such a boom year for stocks, for Bitcoin, what happened was they listed all the homes that had sold by the greatest percentage over asking price in Santa Clara County. And my house only, out of the top 50 homes, my house was like 30th on the list as a percentage. So there were, it was like some crazy number, like 70% of the houses sold for over asking price. But in that list, I was only like in the top, I was like the 30th highest percentage over asking price. And so, you know, so in real estate, except for Silicon Valley, real estate returns, they call it cap rate, is somewhere between 2 and 6%. Maybe in a crappy neighborhoods. And I was on Space, and this guy said, I said, what's a typical cap return? A capitalized return after spending everything? I go, it's like 2 to 6%. And this guy goes, well, if I buy it in a really crappy neighborhood, I can get 12% a year. I'm like, okay, you get 12% a year. The returns are so crappy on real estate, 12%, right?
Mhm.
That they invented all of these tax loopholes. And people are like, tax loopholes? What are you talking about? Well, your mortgage interest is deductible on your home, right? And if you have it as an investment property, you could depreciate the property. And then you have a 1031 exchange,
Yeah.
whereas you sell the property. If you take the proceeds and buy another house within 6 months, I'm not giving any tax advice. Look up 1031 exchange. You don't pay taxes on that because you bought another property. And so you postpone paying taxes on that gain. And so because the returns are so bad, they optimize the tax code to basically incentivize landlords to buy properties in order, obviously, to fix it, whatever. So when we think about Bitcoiners is, if you make a 50% return in 1 year and you typically make 5%, per year in real estate, it would take you 10 years to do it. You compress the time frame. And when I say things like this, people are like, "Oh, I never looked at it that way." I go, "Well, how do you look at it?"
Yeah.
And Grant Cardone's a good example of this.
Yeah.
He's like, "I buy marquee properties in high rent areas. I want to have expensive properties because those people come in are typically more credit worthy and they pay high rents, and I can make more money because it's more expensive." And you're like, "Oh." So, and then these properties, they go up in value more because they're newer. Like if you buy a 50-year-old house, all your crap is 50 years old in it, unless you update it. It's a lot of maintenance. Anyway, with that said, I just wanted to say that I don't know why people don't think in systems. What I just told about real estate, any real estate investor, if they, I can explain real estate to you, it's going to take 2 hours. No, I just explained it in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You're going to have
Yeah.
appreciation and a cash flow.
And
you're
I
going to
think,
depreciate taxes. Go ahead.
and I was gonna say, like, and what a lot of what we're trying to like gear the show towards is not people that have held Bitcoin and have 100 Bitcoin. Like, there's enough of that. There's some really good content out there. Lynn has an amazing book. I love Lynn's book, Broken Money. But it's also thinking about like the next generation of like, Holston, who does the show tomorrow with me. She's like looking at how do we speak to Gen Z? If you can't afford to buy one Bitcoin, you're not going to retire on one Bitcoin, in the next 5 years. So thinking of yourself like a treasury company where you need operating cash, you need to provide value to the world where people want to pay you for things. And like you said about Rockefeller earlier, it's like he had cash because he had a cash flowing business. And then he waited for downturns like Bitcoin at 66, to buy in. I know we've gone over time, so I wanted to do some rapid fire real quick. I'll add this to stage. So this is just to your point on the 8K side. So my main, what I spend most of my time on, 21 Raids, so kind of like NerdWallet for Bitcoin Personal Finance. I have been building this filings and disclosures tool. So any 8K Form 4, 42485 or B5 coming in, it's all in here. So we're going to pull it in. We pull it in automatically. We try to do some summaries. So Graham, trying to make things easy for people to understand. I'm still working on it. So if there's bugs here, let me know. And we're going to continue working on it. But we want to get information like this, and structured data so that people can look to it. It's also all sourced and cited. So click out to the Edgar filings on the SEC website. For our sponsors predicts, also want to shout out Bitcoin below 45K in 2026. Do you think the bottom's in? What's your personal take?
Look, I think the bottom's in. Somebody can call me a perma bull. I don't think we're hitting 45K. I just don't see it. I think that, and I just tweeted Joe Carlosari. Given, whatever Bitcoin hit a high, I believe, on October 6th. So you have November, December, and then you have we're in 6 months, so you're 8 months into this bear market. I think it's more likely we're at the end of the bear market, provided we don't get some stupid,
Yeah.
Geopolitical stuff or some other, bad economic news. I think the bottom is in, and if you're waiting for 45,000, again, it's not all or nothing. If you think Bitcoin's going to 45,000, okay, and let's say you have a 100 grand to deploy. It doesn't matter if it's $100 or 100 grand. I would deploy 20% of your capital now.
Yeah. I mean,
and
I'm
then
a
leave 80%, right? And
Yeah.
there's a term, and it's called schmuck insurance. And people are like, schmuck insurance, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So you're gonna let's say you built a business and you sell it. Let's say the business was crappy or the business was good. You sell the business to somebody, whatever price you pick, and you say, you know what, I'm going to retain 10% of the business. I won't have any voting rights, but I'll be able to sell it at some point in the future. That's called schmuck insurance. Because if somebody acquires your business and then they 10x it, you're like, oh my God, I sold all of it and they turned it around. So that's the schmuck insurance, because you got paid for 90% of what you wanted and you kept 10% of it. And then in the future, if you lose the 10%, you don't care. But if that's where you're being a schmuck, you just didn't think it would happen. And Grant Cardone had never heard of the term, and I had said it on a call, and he's like, schmuck insurance. I'm like, yeah, the term was invented like, I don't know, somebody said 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like you're accounting for something that you may miss because you're being a jerk.
Yeah.
That's all it means.
Yeah. There's a really good reason not to don't look at people that go all in on one thing. It rarely works out. Right?
So how that's related to the 45K, don't be a schmuck, right? Yeah. The difference between 45K and 60K as a percentage is somebody's like, oh, there's a 25% difference. I go, if Bitcoin goes to 150,000 next year, which is not a crazy number, did that 15K make a difference? No, because on 150,000, it's only a 10% difference. So I don't think it's going below 45.
Yeah. I think 45 is low. I think we could get another scare dip, but it seems like most people this week are starting to get the inklings of feeling more bullish, feeling like we're coming back.
I think the scare dip is going to be tempered by the fact that, does Stretch get back to par? Do they start buying? Yeah. Like if strategy was to sell 15,000 Bitcoin, right, which I think which would be almost $1 billion, they could then use that to buy back MSTR and STRC, and that would still be Bitcoin per share accretive.
Yeah.
And I have a post on this. So all of a sudden, if Stretch gets back to $100 and they start buying Bitcoin again, people will be like, well, this crazy man is on his path to get to 900,000 Bitcoins and then 1 million. And you'll see the tide turn very quickly. So I don't know if so this gets back to what I think about probabilistically. I think you got to weigh out those two things. You think Bitcoin's going to 45K? Okay. What's the concept that this MIT master's degree aeronautical engineer that's been buying Bitcoin for 6 years is going to try and get to 1 million Bitcoins before the end of this year? And will Stretch get back to 100? That's the bet you're making. And I would, the one thing I know about billionaires is that they want to be a bigger billionaire. I think he wants to buy more Bitcoin. I do. Anyway, that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I love it. And
so rapid fire, any other, give me some quick questions. I'll be brief.
Yeah. Rapid fire. Are you still in the options game? Are you interested in some? We've been vocal, we've been very transparent with our audience on everything. But like I've been interested in like Strive call options for January 2027 as well as 2028. I think that they're not very liquid, but I think the team's operating very well. I think they're my best thing is I think they're internalizing, or my take is I think they're internalizing strategies lessons. They're bumps in the road. And then they're moving. Okay, what would strategy want to do if they were our tiny much smaller micro cap size? And so that's why my bet's on them. I think I'm biased because we also both know Jeff. But yeah, what's your take on both options and Strive?
I don't tell my I don't tell my
Yeah.
strike prices anymore, but I will tell expiration dates, and I won't say relative sizes anymore. But with that said, I don't own any strategy options as of right now.
Mhm.
I just don't. I do own a bunch of Strive for January 2027, and I have a bigger position in January 2028.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I like the January 2028s, I mean, look, I'm buying call options because I think the price is
Yeah.
going to go up, obviously, so much. I bought enough that I could sell a quarter of them or a third of them, where then I can exercise the other
Mhm.
call options I have for January 2028, and those would all be long-term capital gains. Because when I exercise those, I'll have to pay taxes on that, but then I could capture the other ones, which will get me the long-term capital gains on those shares. So I would have to sell some. I would trigger a profit, and then I can use that to exercise those other shares, and that would be tax efficient in a taxable account. So not only that's why I like the January 2028s, because they'll definitely be more than a year old. So that,
Yeah.
and I entered that position 8 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and right now it's kind of rough, but I think that because it's a smaller company, from a flow perspective, I think more money could flow into it. So, and they have zero debt, and
Yeah.
nobody has figured out how amplification works in a bull market.
Yeah.
I could do all kinds of calculations on it. The calculations will be correct. What is unknown is probabilistically, how does that affect the stock price? Nobody can figure that probabilistically. The mechanics of it is easy.
Yeah. I think one thing I've learned from the market is Micron pops off. They've been crushing it. They've made more in a quarter, and we've talked about this, than most companies have ever made in a quarter historically. There's a very few amount of people that made 25 billion in a quarter. And the thing is there's so much trickle down investment interest in the AI bottlenecks, into photonics, into like all the packaging. ASML has obviously done very well, but that is my thesis. Is I do think strategy pops off. There's so many people chasing beta to strategy, and they're going to be looking at, what Matt Cole said when we talked to him is around, we think we're from this point forward going to outperform, and there's a much smaller market cap.
So
you guys,
let me wrap
go
up on Strive. Look, Strive is 60% amplification, and it has no debt. And it's whatever, $1.5 billion, let's say market cap, whatever it currently is, a little bit over $1 billion. I think as an opportunity, I like that. And I own straight outright shares. There's that. And I think that is the other thing is that Q1 and Q2 of 2026 was the second and third best Bitcoin in nominal terms accumulations for strategy in a down market.
Yeah.
So in a bull market, how amplification works, they're going to keep that up. And look, if strategy has 40% amplification and Strive has 60%, they have 50% more amplification, and they have zero debt. You just can't model that right now to the upside. And so, and they're capital efficient. They're basically, strategy gets 10 miles per gallon. They get one. So on a sats per share basis, strategy is still better, but they have amplification. They don't have any converts at all. They do have a warrant at $27. But from that perspective, I learned so much by what happened over the years. The other Bitcoin treasury companies, I wish them the best, but as of right now, it's a two company game.
Yeah, you only focus on so many at one time.
It is.
So
but Jody,
you
I
guys,
want to go ahead. Thank you.
I was gonna say, you guys on tonight for True North. Is that gonna be the next time we get to see you?
Yeah, we'll be on tonight. I think we're only going to be on for an hour to summertime. Okay. I'm going to talk more about cash. The question that we always have: what's the right amount of cash? I mean, is it 24 months, 36 months of payments? Is it just a dollar amount? Like, do people just like $4 billion because it's a round number? So I think we're going to talk a bit about that and Strive. We did it anyway with that. So we'll be on tonight. I'll jump on this call anytime with you. Just let me know in the future. And I have not been looking. I did retweet this multiple times, so I'll look at the comments and respond back. But Jody, it's been great discussion, and we went over. But I appreciate all your time, And I hope that this was helpful to you and the listeners. I truly do.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you taking the time. I think all listeners, one huge takeaway is do your diligence, find the right data, garbage in, garbage out. I think that's the biggest lesson of like, go find the right prices, go find the right data from TradingView that you can download, ask AI how to get the right data, and then follow its instructions on how to do it. Because I think the work you're putting in is actually like, is showing, hey, here's my math. And then here's the data backing up my math. And not enough people are going the extra mile to do so.
Yeah, I think it's great. So thank you for your time today. Take care. And just send me an invite. I'd be happy to jump back on the show again.
Amazing. Thank you, Graham.
You too. Bye.